This is a bit different for us. I've never actually done a movie review before. Typically, I would just kind of do a toy review and put my thoughts of the movie in that. But for this, I wanted to actually kind of do something a little bit more special because, for whatever reason, it feels like this movie is deserving of that. More so than any other movie I've seen. It feels like everyone just wants to talk about their takes. They want to talk about how they felt this movie did, what it did great, what it didn't do so great. And I think a lot of it really just come down to the fact that Mario is such a universal character. This games are so universally beloved that everyone has a connection to this setting, to these characters, to this story, as much as you can call it a story. And I'm very similar, you know. I consider myself a lifelong Mario fan. I'm not gonna say I'm absolutely diehard. I've not played every single Mario game. I've not watched every single piece of Mario media. I've never seen the Japanese anime that came out. Um, but I do like Mario. And Mario as a series, as a franchise, does mean a great deal to me. So, absolutely. Let's kind of just get into this. So, just kind of general feelings out of the way. I liked it. I thought it was great. I'm not much of a like numerically reviewed type of person. Like I wouldn't say like, oh well, this was a 7.8 out of 10, but I thought it was good. I think that there were things that could definitely be worked on and improved on. I don't think that this is like the Citizen Kane of movies, but like I think it was great. I think especially for a film that's dealing with the Mario setting, they did a really phenomenal job. Because, and this isn't me trying to diss Mario, Mario and all the characters in Mario are so great to me because they're like the golden age cartoon characters. And that works because, of course, Mickey, uh, because Mario and Bowser are, their roots are in a Popeye game that Nintendo was making that they lost the rights to, and then Shigeru Miyamoto changed it to be Jumpman and Donkey Kong. Um, so that's their appeal, is you can put them in any setting, any situation. It could be serious, it could be comical, it could be lighthearted, it could be, encroaching on like more serious subject matter, but it works. And because of that, their characterizations have always been somewhat broad. I keep using that word universal because they are. They're universal characters. You don't need to understand language or the story to understand what these characters are about, what the plot is about. So that's kind of a vague place to start when you're trying to make a movie, because you have to have something. You have to have a plot of some kind. You have to have characters of some kind. So I think they did the best they could do, all things considered. And I think that some things they did was just absolutely phenomenal, like no questions asked. Here's an immediate positive for this movie: animation. To me, this is a gorgeous film. I think they perfectly captured the essence of the Mario animation style, art style, in terms of the character design, in terms of the settings, in terms of this universe, and really gave a lot of new detail and definition to it. I think a prime candidate to see that is Bowser. And even the landscapes are just so beautiful to look at. There's a shot I can think of where Luigi first wakes up in the Darklands and he's picking up his toolbox, and it's just a phenomenal shot. Like, I almost had a moment where I forgot it was CG. Like, that's how good the VFX were. That said, like, I could see it being jarring. And the reason I say that is I went to see this with my sister, and she thought that it was almost a clash. Like, you had these unbelievably detailed settings, and you have these characters who, even though they're more detailed than the usual Mario character designs, they're still very much the Mario character designs. So there's almost a disconnect. Like I could compare it to The Good Dinosaur that Pixar put out, where you had ultra realistic backgrounds, super cartoony dinosaurs. Another example that just comes to mind with my other sister is the G1 Transformers movie, where you have Toei Animation just going insane on the backgrounds and on the environments, and you have these very blocky, very kind of exaggerated proportions on the actual Transformers. So I could definitely see this being something people could knock, but for me, it worked a treat. Good Dinosaur is a movie that bothers me with the art direction. This one I think fits because everything is still so colorful. They're not going for ultra realism with the environments. But at the same time, I could see the environments are so detailed. Some of the characters are so detailed. Right off the top of my head, Bowser and Donkey Kong are so detailed. It's weird to look at a character like, say, Toad, who is still very simple and very stylized as a model, as a character model. Animation's kind of a softball because this is Illumination. If there's one thing everyone can agree on, it's the fact that Illumination has just phenomenal ability in terms of their art style. Where Illumination tends to fall off is things like story and character work, and we'll get to that later. I know for a lot of people, though, the thing that we were worried about when we were going into the film was going to be the voice acting. And I was kind of on that train. Like, I wasn't hating on it. I wasn't saying, like, oh, this is going to be awful. But I was definitely one of those people who heard Chris Pratt as Mario and kind of, scratched my head at that. Overall, voice acting ranged from perfectly solid to spectacular for me. We're going to go through the characters later on, but just in terms of vocal performances, right? Chris Pratt as Mario actually kind of worked. There were a handful of lines where it seems like there was maybe just a bad reading, or maybe it just didn't mesh well with like the other audio in the scene. But it's fine enough. I was never taken out of the movie for the most part. There's a few times where it got a little bit iffy, and a lot of times it was like when they were forcing the Mario catchphrases in. But I thought he was good enough as our main character. In terms of Charlie Day Luigi, he's just hardly in the movie, but where he is there, Charlie Day does a phenomenal Luigi. I think that was a highlight of the movie. You'll have to forgive me, I'm blanking on their name, but Princess Peach's actor. Similar to Charlie Day, or similar to Chris Pratt, rather, where I think they did a really good job. I think that occasionally there was a line that was just a bit awkward given the environment they were in. One I can think of is like when later on in the movie when they're all on the carts and she's kind of like saying, let's go, we're charging forward. It's a little bit strange, but at the same time, being a very amateur actor, having very limited experience as an actor, that to me, in my very limited pool of knowledge and references, that to me feels like that might have been questionable direction over questionable acting, if that makes any sense. Going on from there, Seth Rogen, Donkey Kong, it worked. I really enjoyed it, and I was kind of surprised by that because I won't lie, I kind of completely forgot Donkey Kong was going to be in the movie. But he wound up having some of my favorite jokes, and there's an amazing Easter egg in there that kind of references the Donkey Kong 64 game that I was not expecting, and I just laughed out loud when I heard it. Keegan-Michael Key as Toad, wonderful, just absolutely wonderful. I kind of wish he was in more of the movie, because I think he had a wonderful Toad voice. Every time he was there, I enjoyed him. But out of all the vocal performances, the clear highlight has to be Jack Black Bowser. And I think, for me personally, when I walked in, I was thinking, Bowser is going to be the best part of this movie. When I walked out, I still felt like Bowser was the best part of this movie. Jack Black kills it. And it's wonderful because everyone else, they're kind of doing their real voice, with the exception of Keegan-Michael Key, who has a phenomenal Toad voice. But, Chris Pratt's kind of just using his voice. Charlie Day's using his voice. There's not a lot of trying to change it or disguise it. Jack Black, even though you can still tell it's him, there's such a growl in his voice that isn't natural for him, that it really does help make you forget that it's an actor in a sound booth. And that is the absolute highest praise you can give a voice actor, is you have found a voice that is so different from yours, that still has so much range, that it just works. And I definitely feel like he found that with Bowser. So we all went into this thinking that voice acting was going to be weird. If I had to say one element of the film, one issue I had with the movie, it would be the pacing. it is a very like weirdly paced movie. Um, and it doesn't start off as that because you have the opening intro with Bowser, and that's over, you know, in an instant, but it's exciting. It gets you invested. Then you have Mario and Luigi in Brooklyn, and literally just as soon as I was starting to think like, oh, this is starting to drag, I want to get to Mushroom Kingdom, they're at the Mushroom Kingdom. So to me, that's like they found the perfect time to change setting. Once we get to the Mushroom Kingdom, it's really weird. Like you can kind of see where like for the sake of their runtime, they had to just get all their story beats in. Um, I think where the pacing suffers the most is this idea of Mario, Toad, and Peach being friends because they kind of just wind up, right? Um, the way I put it is Peach and Mario, over the course of like a few minutes in the film, go from having never met to now they're having like a deep heart to heart. And granted, in the film, they have that like overnight montage of Mario training, but for the audience, that's exactly what it is. It's a montage, and it's a montage that is very comical. So you're not getting a sense that these characters are getting close to each other. Um, and by the end of the film, Toad, Peach, and Mario, and Donkey Kong and Luigi are supposed to be like this unit. You're supposed to buy into the fact that like they're friends now. This is the team. This is the squad. And I just don't think there's enough time to really build up those relationships. Weirdly enough, like obviously Mario and Luigi, their relationship's given enough time, we can understand that one. Aside from them, the duo that I think gets the most screen time and the most development is Mario Donkey Kong. And even that's kind of rushed, but you see the points where it's like they go from meeting each other, fighting each other, resenting each other, helping each other, respecting each other. Like it's a very rushed line, but there is a line. Peach and Mario, there's just not that. They kind of just are friends at a certain point. Same thing with Mario and Toad. Same thing with Peach and Toad. At least with Peach and Toad, there's the idea that the reason Peach is so taken with this specific Toad is the fact that he's the one Toad who's willing to stand his ground. But even that, like, is kind of rushed. It's a thing where it feels like there was a 10-episode season of Super Mario Bros. And I'm watching someone's highlights from the show without any of the extra scenes. And it's not that I dislike these scenes. They're really great. But that's what this movie feels like, is it doesn't feel like a movie, it feels like a collection of good scenes with not a lot of connection between them. And I don't know how you could improve that. Like, you could give like an extra 15 minutes runtime, have some quieter moments, some more kind of world building, friendship building moments, especially with Peach and Mario and Mario and Toad. Alternatively, you could cut out the Donkey Kong stuff. Like, the Donkey Kong stuff is so fun, but within the plot of the movie, it kind of doesn't matter because, and we're getting into spoilers here, they go to Donkey Kong's country, which I believe is called the Jungle Kingdom. I was expecting Congo Bongo, but the Jungle Kingdom. And they go there for an army. About 10 minutes after they get the army, they lose the army. So, in that way, you don't need that problem. And, like, if I were to say, like, oh, streamline this, you could cut out all that and just have it be Mario, Peach, Toad in the kingdom, building up their relationships, building up their friendships, and they're going to defend it. Or, like I say again, alternatively, give 15 minutes extra, give a little bit more time for especially Mario and Peach. And I think Mario and Peach at the beginning, right when they meet each other, there's a scene where like Peach is amazed to find another human being, and then we're kind of going past that and we're going to talk about it later. Why not stretch out that scene a little bit more? Have them go back into the throne room, tell all the Toads like, okay, clear out, we need to talk, and just have like a cool world building moment. But we do eventually get that. We do eventually get that in the film. We already kind of talked about this when we talked about pacing, but I also wanted to go over like characterizations and story arcs. So Mario is simple enough. He wants to reunite with Luigi, wants to save his younger brother, and his character arc is not really an arc. It really is just he's learning the rules of this world because his mission from point A to point B is save my brother. There is like a smaller arc in there about how he feels like he's a small person in a big man's world, that he feels like he needs to prove himself. And there's not really a resolution to those things aside from the bully early on in the film cheers for him at the end. So like his arc is very simple. He's a flat character, which is fine. You know, there's a place for main characters who are flat characters. There's a place for Superman, you know. Um, Luigi is hardly in the movie. Luigi probably has 15-ish minutes of screen time. Most of that time he's locked away in a cage. What we get of Luigi is great, and he's also given an arc of like learning to stand up for himself and not just let Mario do all the fighting. But there's just not enough time to really delve into that. I think they did what they could with the screen time Luigi was provided. And of course, it's amazing at the end when you see them fighting together. But yeah, Luigi is definitely kind of a victim here. It's the Super Mario Bros. Movie without much of the bros. Toad is very similar, in which Toad is, every time he's on screen, I thought it was great. I, loved the moments we had with him. He doesn't really have an arc, aside from maybe I'm proving myself as a Toad. But that's not really explained or gone into, aside from just he's the brave one. He's the one who adventures, he's the one who defends himself, he's the one who would defend Peach when all the other Toads run away. Peach is interesting because there's parts of this movie that actually kind of enrich Peach as a character for me. So, once again, spoiler, Peach's backstory is same as Mario and Luigi. She is a human from another planet, possibly Earth, but possibly another planet, who came to the Mushroom Kingdom as a baby and was raised by the Toads. And that detail alone actually kind of makes their government make more sense to me, because she's not their princess by birth. They named her their princess because she was the smartest and the strongest and the most willing to fight for them. And to me, the Toads in this movie are so childlike. They're so innocent and naive throughout. That makes me think they don't associate Queen as a position of authority, at least not benevolent authority. So Peach's role as princess really is just the Toads all being children and like little kids thinking, well, you're good, so you're a princess. I'm probably reading way too deep into that. In fact, I know I'm reading way too deep into that, but it was cool. I liked that. Overall, I liked a lot of what they did with Peach. I liked how she was basically like the only sane man in this situation where everyone was either like crazy or just bonkers. And I think that's a cool characterization for Peach. So I enjoyed that. Donkey Kong was very, he was given a good bit of screen time for when he's introduced, because he's introduced like in the third act, basically. A lot of fun, a lot of potential as a rival to Mario. A very Daffy Duck Bugs Bunny situation between Mario and Donkey Kong, which is spectacular. I think that's the best way to show their relationship. And then finally there's Bowser. And Bowser gets his own side. Like I said before, I went into this movie thinking Bowser was going to be the best part. I left thinking Bowser was the best part. As a character, I talked earlier about pacing and how I felt all the characters needed more time. Bowser's the exception. And there's a part of me where, like, I want to see more Bowser, but when I really think about it, they gave us the perfect amount of him in the movie. He has a handful of scenes dedicated to him, very similar to, like, Darth Vader in the original Star Wars, in that he probably has a very low amount of screen time, but they make the most of every scene with him, and we understand him as a character. I especially love, like, his piano scene, and how when Comic comes in with the news of Mario, it just immediately switches and he starts playing like the da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da, and then slams the case down on Comic's fingers. And then there's another funny scene later on where Comic is dressed up as Princess Peach and Bowser's like practicing his proposal to Peach. A lot of really funny moments, and yet he's still very menacing. They got that perfectly from the games, where Bowser is a silly character who can so quickly, on a dime, be menacing. And that's just amplified by Jack Black. Really enough, and this is super nerd talk. This is a nitpick that no real critic would have. This is just a thing with me. A huge reason as to why I love Bowser is that he is a mustache twirling villain. He is a card carrying villain, but he's a benevolent king. Like, his citizens follow him out of respect and adoration. And he never does anything to hurt his Koopas or his Goombas or any of his underlings. And even the ones who betray him, he wishes them well. And he's just sorry that, like, he couldn't make their relationship work. In this movie, they go more the standard cartoon villain route, where it's like he's a bad boss. He kills a Koopa Troopa for questioning him. He physically abuses Comic, which that was actually like a moment where it's like, oh, I don't like that. Because for anyone who doesn't know, Comic is basically Bowser's adopted dad. They don't mention it in the movie. In the movie, it just comes off as Comic is just a very loyal underling. But, you know, I still love this Bowser a lot. I don't like that they had to add those things to his characterization because, and this is a nitpick with me as a person, this is a problem that I have that no one else should have or would have. I'm such a big character person. I dislike it when you do things that simplify a character. To me, Bowser is the most interesting Mario villain because he's so evil and yet would never hurt anyone under him. Even though he has that ferocious temper, and everyone's scared of his temper, but they know he would never kill them in his temper. To have him, you know, breathe fire and kill a Koopa Troopa kind of took me out of it. But that's just because of my weird obsession with this character. That's not a real critique of the movie. That's a stupid nitpick that only my stupid brain could have. So, take everything I just said, because I've gone over like some of the weaknesses of this film. Do you want to know what I think is the single greatest strength of this movie? The music. I read up on this individual, I forgot their name. The composer of this film did a phenomenal job taking all the Mario soundtracks and incorporating them into a proper film orchestra. And it sounds beautiful. And it's this thing where you hear these themes, and it takes a second, but you recognize them. But they're so naturalistically put in that it just sounds so beautiful and so organic for a film. And it's a thing where, as beautiful as the original composition is, one nitpick I have is they do a lot of music from the 80s. Though the one that like I actually laughed at because I thought was funny is they do Take On Me when they're like driving through the Jungle Kingdom. And then, while I'm sitting there, that's fun. But then when I really think about it, it's like, oh, well, maybe I would have liked to hear, you know, a Donkey Kong country song put into that beautiful composition format. So when they're using pop culture songs, none of them take me out of it. But the composition, the original soundtrack, so cool, so amazing, that I kind of wanted the whole movie soundtrack to just be that. And it's a thing where, like, I feel like Mario is a series so connected to the hip with its music, to the point where even Shigeru Miyamoto has constantly said that the music is the key element to why Mario works as a character, as a franchise, as a game, everything. To where I kind of wish they just did that soundtrack, because all the songs in it were so good. I would buy it. I would buy the soundtrack. And of course, you know, the standout example, the one that's already a meme, is Bowser's villain song, Peaches, his love song to Princess Peach, which it just came out today in an interview. That was not planned. That was not written. Jack Black just sang that song on the spot and then wrote a composition for it afterwards, or he worked on the composition for it afterwards. And of course, this is the one that everyone's going to focus on. Everyone's going to talk about Peaches, and they should, because I love this. This is great. But the rest of the soundtrack deserves praise, because it really is something special. And it's more immersive I was more immersed in this movie because of the soundtrack and because of the art style than I was, say, the Sonic movies. Because the Sonic movies, even though there'd be a few like musical homages, for the most part, that was all just more standard movie fare. This was something so unique, and I don't think you'd get this experience with like any other movie. Just hearing these universally recognized bits and pieces of songs transform like this. Dude, the DK rap is in this movie. The DK rap is in this movie. Princess Peach's castle theme from Mario 64 is in the movie. The World 1-1 theme is in this movie. And each of them, it takes a few seconds for you to realize because it is so well produced. So, of all the highs and lows of this movie, this is the absolute highest high, at least for me. Alright, I talked about what my highlight for the film is. Let's talk about what most other people would say is the highlight, and that is the references, and there are a lot. If you've ever seen the Red Letter Media video on Rogue One, where it's just, I clapped because I recognized what an AT-AT was. This movie. Like, I went to see it with my sister Ella and her boyfriend Clark, and they enjoyed it for the most part, but both of them aren't as into Mario as I am. Clark is more into games than Ella is. Ella really just knows Mario through Mario Kart. And there were so many things where like I was laughing and giggling and I was like, yeah, look at that. And they'd just be like... So I think that a huge reason why I like this movie really might just be that, you know, that I know that, I recognize that, I know that reference. But there are some good ones in here. There's a lot of good ones in here. There's like when Bowser's playing the piano is made by Ludwig von Koopa, which is one of the Koopalings. There's references to several Mario Kart items that you see during the Mario Kart race. There's the fact that the way that they build the carts is the same way you build the carts in Mario Kart 8 with like the 3 dials. All the music is a reference. You see basically every single Mario villain, like enemy to ever exist in this game at some point. There's references to Luigi's Mansion when they're in Bowser's Castle and the Shy Guys show up. There's so much. There is so much. Charles Martinet is in there Charles Martinet, the original voice of Mario in the games, he's in there as Jumpman. He's wearing the Mario Bros. Arcade game outfit for Mario, and he is playing the arcade game Jumpman, which Jumpman was Mario's original name. In this universe, Nintendo still exists, but of course, Mario isn't their mascot. Jumpman is. There's also, like, smaller things. Like, you see Diddy and Candy Kong, as well as all the other Kongs from the 64 game during the time in Jungle Kingdom. Funky Kong is the bouncer of the Jungle Kingdom. There's the parachute from Mario Kart 8. To me, one of the coolest references, there's a diner that's in the beginning of the film and the very end of the film, and it's the Punch-Out Diner. And you don't know that until later on when you see the outside. But when you're first in there, you're in the interior. Mario and Luigi are watching their commercial, which it turns out that they reference to the Super Mario rap, the one that everyone went crazy for. It's in the movie. It's the commercial the brothers made to try to get their plumbing business off the ground. But the camera pulls out, and there's like framed photos of like King Hippo and Glass Joe, and there's like a poster that's like the title bout between Little Mac and Mr. Sandman. And later on, you go back to the Punch-Out Diner, and there's even more posters of Punch-Out characters. With all that love for Mario and even Punch-Out, you'd think there'd be like Mario, like Nintendo references all over the place. There's really not. Like, I didn't hear or see any Zelda references. There wasn't any Kirby references. And I was starting to think, like, why would it be Punch-Out? And then I realized Punch-Out and Mario are the two, like, major arcade hits for Nintendo. Because Mario's first big hit, of course, is Donkey Kong. In terms of the arcades, is Donkey Kong. And then I think Mario Bros. Came out next, and then Punch-Out was their other huge arcade hit. And then Arm Wrestling was like the sequel to Punch-Out. That was also a big arcade hit. So maybe I'm overthinking it. I think that's the connection there. The fact that like there is this connection between Mario and Punch-Out that none of the other Nintendo IPs have. It could also literally just be Little Mac is from New York and Mario's from Brooklyn. That's probably the reason. I'm probably just really overthinking it. Um, but there's so many just innocuous references. When you're at the Jungle Kingdom, all the gorilla guards have the golden hammer from Super Smash Bros. Um, there's just it's a reference overload. I'm sure you could go in there with a fine tooth comb and just find thousands upon thousands upon thousands. I don't have the memory to do that, but you could do it. And we're probably going to see 10,000 videos coming out where it's like 100 references in the Mario movie you didn't catch. But that's not what this video is. So then I guess here's the big question is, where do you go from here? Because, and once again, spoilers, there is a post-credit scene where you see Yoshi's egg hatch, and they introduce Yoshi's Island as a setting during a travel montage. You've established the Jungle Kingdom, so you've established all of Donkey Kong stuff. You've of course established Mario, you've established Bowser, you established that the Koopalings exist in this universe somehow because of the Ludwig von Koopa piano. And this movie was such a huge hit. Nintendo's so happy with it. Illumination's so happy with it. Universal's so happy with it. There's going to be a sequel. There's probably going to be a lot of sequels. But there's definitely going to be at least one sequel. And I can see the question of, like, where do you go from here? And I kind of see, like, maybe 3 separate routes they go for, like, the direct sequel. And this is going to get very, like, tinfoil hatty. Just be aware. One is you could do like the original Super Mario Bros. 2 did and go to the Dream Kingdom and have Wart as the villain. And you would already have Peach, Toad, Luigi, Mario as your main characters. Those are the 4 playable characters in that game. You could do that. I don't personally see them doing that just because who cares about Wart? He's been in like 3 games and one of those was a Zelda game. But they could do something like that. I think what's more probable is second movie, they're going to have Comic somehow like create Bowser Jr., or maybe he's going to call the Koopalings, they free Bowser, there's a new plan of the week. I think that's probably the direction they'd go. Nintendo loves putting the Koopalings in everything right now. People enjoy seeing the Koopalings, and they've already established that at least Ludwig is in this setting. I think the other like possibility is maybe next movie isn't a Mario movie, they just do a Donkey Kong movie, and maybe you have King K. Rool as the villain. And maybe you lean more into like the Mario Kart stuff because Jungle Kingdom is where all the karts are. And then I even saw like on Wikipedia, like under like future sequels, I think they literally said like we're considering like a dedicated Mario Kart movie, which is interesting. I don't know how that would work, but like it would be really cool to see. You definitely have directions you could go with that. But in terms of greater sphere, right? Where does Nintendo go after this? Because I think they see this, and now they've had 2 massive hits in terms of movies on their hand. Because they had Detective Pikachu, they've had Mario. I know that like that Legend of Zelda Netflix show has been in development hell for like 10 years. I don't even know if it's still ongoing. But a part of me thinks like Nintendo might just say like, okay, let's do a Zelda movie. With weirdly enough how many Punch-Out things are in this movie, maybe they would do a Punch-Out thing. I don't know if a movie, but like maybe a show. That'd be cool. Like I think the thing that this has really done for Nintendo is they look at this and they're going to say like, there is a huge appetite for movies and shows based on our IPs. And weirdly enough, they've been really selective, and it's very rare to get that. Because like you have to go all the way back to the 80s, to the Super Mario Bros. Super Show and that Legend of Zelda, really, for a time when Nintendo had like a dedicated, like we have a entertainment division. And I know later on they had the Kirby anime, they had a Animal Crossing anime movie, they had the live action Mario movie, which kind of killed all their attempts to try to make media out of these things. So I think, like, to me, the most exciting thing about this movie is, I think more than anything, Nintendo realizes people love us. They love these settings, they love these characters, they love everything about it. Let's go. What can we do? And as a fan, I would like that. I would love more Mario stuff in terms of movies, in terms of shows. I would love more Pokemon stuff. Like you have no idea how much I'd love more Pokemon stuff. There's my Umbreon fan art behind me. Um, but yeah, like it's really exciting. It's really exciting that we're getting to a point where like we're getting quality video game movies and video game adaptations, and I really hope that people keep going in this direction, making these things that are really fun and are really rewarding and do make money. Um, because I feel like there was kind of an albatross around the necks of video game companies trying to make adaptations for so many years. This video has gone on a lot longer than I intended it to, so let me just wrap up by saying this. I think that this was a really fun movie. I don't think it's a great movie. I think it's a movie that definitely has problems, but I still think that it was really fun to watch. And I think it was a lot of just great artistry on display in terms of the animation and in terms of the music. And I think the voice acting was solid. I don't like doing like number grades, but I think this was a better than average movie. And more importantly, you got to remember, all these reviewers, all these critics, me included, we're adults. We're gonna look at this, and we even if we try to be open minded, there's gonna be parts of us that are gonna be comparing this to other things. The thing that I treasure most about this movie is when I went to watch it with Ella. We were in a theater where we were seated and we had maybe three or four kids in the theater. And every time Mario showed up on screen, I would just hear them say Mario. When Bowser showed up on screen, I'd hear them say Bowser. And I'd hear them laugh, and I'd hear them get so excited. Like they couldn't even stay in their seats. And, I know a lot of people would probably say, like, oh, well, that sounds like a nightmare. No, it's not. These kids, this is everything. This is everything, and they adored it. So I'm happy that I enjoyed it. But even if I hated it, I loved that experience of hearing little kids, and this is the best thing they've ever seen. This is something where they're gonna go home, they're gonna get action figures, they're gonna get stuffed animals, they're gonna recreate this movie 100 times, they're going to think to themselves, like imaginary new adventures, what happens after this. They're going to, in that way, be writing their own stories, and maybe that goes later on to them becoming writers or animators or game designers. Don't laugh at kids' movies, man, because a kids' movie can always be someone's first step into becoming an amazing creator. I think of so many movies I grew up with that aren't good movies, but they motivated me, they inspired me, they gave me that energy when I was a kid. I think of the Pokemon movies, like the first couple, I think up until Pokemon 4, when I was kind of getting old enough to where I wasn't watching them as much. I think of like The Land Before Time, I think of Toy Story. I think of the first Michael Bay Transformers movie that came out when I was 7. And these things, like, to this day, I'm still in love with those things, with those franchises. And they helped guide me into becoming who I am. So that's going to be what sticks with me about this movie, is that excitement. And being excited to see what happens next, what goes on next. I know I've been ragging on number scores. The best way I'm going to articulate this is a 7 out of 10 movie. It's not the best thing you're ever going to see. It's not going to be studied at, it's not going to be studied at Juilliard as to how to act. It's not going to be studied at SoCal. Well, it might be studied at SoCal for animation. But what it is it's going to leave an effect on the people who see it. Mostly young people who see it. And it was fun. It was a good experience in the theater. And I'm a simple person, that's all I need.